Today's my take on is on, well, there's two verses that I can use. I will read them to you. There's it's in Colossians 3:21 and Ephesians 6:4, both. It's about the same thing. It's one's worded a little bit differently. So I've got them on two sites. So the Colossians 3:21. Verse can be read in various ways. They have it at World Wide Web Bible Gateway.com /verse/en. Colossians percentage 203 percentage 3A21. All right, and there's a different versions on here. The shortest version is fathers, do not exasperate your children so they won't become discouraged, or parents, don't provoke your children in a way that ends up discouraging them. They're both about the same thing. And then I'm going to read the Amplified Bible version. On this page it says, fathers, do not provoke or irritate or exasperate your children with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, nor by favoritism or indifference. Treat them tenderly with loving kindness, and that was in brackets, the with through the loving kindness. And then there's a comma, so they will not lose heart and become discouraged or unmotivated, and in brackets, with their spirits broken. And why I am citing two Bible verses is because they're very similar. I'm also going to let you know that in a Bible, I remember it saying, do not be cruel to your children. So it might have been the Revised Standard Version. I'm not sure. But then I don't have, on either page, there's no Revised Standard Version in the list. So can't say that it is or it isn't. I'd have to look it up to make sure. And so now we have the BibleHub.com Ephesians 6:4, and it's https://BibleHub.com/6-4.htm. Okay, the first one they have is New International Version. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. And I will go, they have an Amplified Bible version. So this is a longer version. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. In brackets, do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, semicolon, nor by showing favoritism or indifference to any of them. Another bracket, then a comma, but bring them up, and then in brackets, tenderly with loving kindness, and then in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So what does this mean is what I'm going to get into. I noticed that some parents are kind of cruel, even among Christians. They're kind of cruel to their children. They're a little bit overly punishing. So we don't want to get what I'm trying to get in is don't abuse your children basically. There's mental abuse, physical abuse, uh, and there's probably a spiritual abuse, like threatening this or that God's gonna get you for that, like, and well, not saying it exactly like that in some harmful fashion, threatening, could discourage them from following God as a Christian. Anything that would be, I would say, anything past a spanking is probably on the road to abuse, basically. And I'm not talking about a hard spanking. I'm talking about one that might cause maybe a slight pain when you slap, but not one that you're like almost beating up your child. And usually you want to leave spankings if you've tried other things like explaining or reminding them first what they're doing wrong, actually talking to them about it. And if they continue to do it and they're just really, really bad behavior, then you can think about a spanking. That's like a last resort option when nothing else works that you can think of. But I'm talking about there's parents who will mentally or, you know, physically or spiritually abuse their children in order to get them to basically be quiet and not do something. Right. You definitely do not want to hit a kid so hard you cause wounds, bleeding. You don't want to cause them to be, as I was saying, you don't want to be hitting a kid so hard that they bleed or have wounds that are visible. You don't want to scare them so bad that they're afraid to do anything ever. They're afraid to try new things, they're afraid to even be themselves at all. You don't want to be scaring your kid into not being themselves. As long as they're not causing a whole lot of problems, you shouldn't be frightening them immensely anyway or threatening them really hard. It should be the punishment should fit the act committed. And basically there's people who don't observe that. They care more about total obedience and they really do things way overkill in order to get someone to just never not cooperate with what they want. That's actually the wrong way of teaching them to be able to function because they'll probably end up having emotional scars and be overly angry when they grow up. So if that's what you went through as a kid, you probably don't want to pass that on to the next generation. You want to discipline within reason so that your child can function normally in regular life without being afraid someone is going to hurt them badly just for doing something wrong. And this is a point I have to make because I have basically had overkill punishments at work and I'm very scared to try any new jobs because of the way people have treated me in the past. There's been abusive bosses in my life where they were overly mean to me, calling me names, acting like I was a big fat jerk, excluding me from stuff. And basically, it seemed more like discriminatory behavior. So, all my life, I seem to have had either, well, when I was a child, nasty other people in my life who hurt me and made me not want to interact. And then when I got older, there was abusive bosses once in a while, or people who used overkill punishments. And I'm afraid to even try some things now just because of that. You don't want to be scaring people away from doing things. And you want to understand that you got to be merciful because God is merciful to you. So you don't threaten to throw somebody out because they made a face at you or something, or said something you didn't exactly like, something you didn't find funny, so you wanted to tell them to not say it again. But you don't have to get overly angry about it, is the point I'm trying to make. Some people believe in that Old Testament stuff about spare the rod and spoil the child, but they don't mean, I don't believe they mean physically hitting children exactly, because there's a figurative way of speaking of the rod and the staff of God comfort the person. So I don't think it always means physically hitting someone. It means discipline and support, help. But they don't mean you're supposed to really be, like I said, overkill in your punishments, overly abusive in any way. You're just supposed to try to make sure that your child at least tries to do things for the good of all people, other people, and tries to behave in a well behaved manner. And you don't want to discourage a sense of humor or anything that is healthy for the child. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And I wanted to thank you for listening to this week's my take on. Hopefully, I'll be back next week at the regular time with a new message for you. Thank you. Oh, did you have to? Now I gotta pause this. I was in the middle of giving my message. I thought I pressed. As I was saying,